Canada's Information Commissioner is now weighing on whether setting limits on when scientists can speak is worth an investigation. Some government scientists are lashing out against what they perceive as unnecessary government control. The government says it's reasonable to ensure the integrity of federally funded research. Is the government working to protect the public interest, or is it muzzling scientists? That's the word used in a new report, and limiting the national debate. We just heard from MPs on this. Let's hear from a scientist. Joining me now from Victoria's Andrew Weaver. He's a climate scientist at the University of Victoria. He's also the deputy leader of the Green Party of British Columbia. Thanks for being here, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you for having me on your show.
All right, you just saw the MPs debate this report here. Walk us through what you see in this report. Is there, in your view, evidence that the government is actively preventing scientists from speaking to the media, or is this simply what most private companies have, a communication plan?
There is so much evidence, it's overwhelming, and there are many, many examples that weren't even included in that report. The example, for example, of the earthquake in Ottawa, where Canadian media tried to get information from the Canadian Geological Survey on the earthquake that happened in Ottawa. Because of, nobody could talk to the media, they couldn't get any information. They had to go to the U.S. Geological Survey to get information on an earthquake, as it was shortly after it happened in Ottawa. The examples are everywhere in this.
Did you ever experience any of this?
I'm a university scientist, so as a university scientist, I'm protected with academic freedom. But I do know many, many colleagues in Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Natural Resources Canada, Environment Canada, who have experienced this directly. So there's ample evidence, and there's many, many studies.
But is it a
this.
new? I mean, I'm reading this report, and there's lots of emails going back and forth. But just characterize this. Is this something new, and what do you think is behind it?
Well, it is new under the Harper regime. What happened is that slowly but surely the access to scientific information has been limited with time. It's got to the stage now that, your Conservative MP spoke about them publishing. Well, in fact, that's the latest target. If you read the latest information coming out of DFO, they are now taking away the ability of the scientist to transfer copyright on behalf of the Crown when in publishing to a bureaucrat. And now there's also forcing people in other countries to sign confidentiality agreements with Canadians.
But to be fair, listen, as the deputy leader of the Green Party in BC, and you use words like the Harper regime, you might be seeing this through clearly trying to score some political points here. Kelly Leitch is saying scientists still grant thousands of interviews. She just said that. What's your view on that?
Well, in fact, you can look at, I looked at these numbers, and the Environment Canada as a collective gave similar amounts of reviews as I did as an individual over the last couple of years. I mean, a slight exaggeration there. They're proud about the numbers that they talk about, but those numbers are actually not very impressive. In fact, there is a memo, I don't know whether it's in the report, showing that Environment Canada media responses went down 80% with the introduction of their media protocol. So there is very clearly attempts to limit. And the reason why, of course, it's also quite clear. And I've been involved in this communication of science long before I ever agreed to run in the provincial government with Green Party. What's happening here is that when you have policy and you want to market policy to a population, it's very inconvenient if there's scientific information available to the population that undermines that policy. So what is happening here in Canada is we're having a suppression of information, so that rather than having evidence-based decision-making, we're more into the framework of having decision-based evidence-making, seeking the evidence that backs its decision that's made politically, and not giving the public free access to the information that would allow them to determine whether or not they support a particular policy or not.
The Information Commission of Canada is now looking at the evidence and considering an investigation. In your view, is the federal government breaking the law?
I'm not a lawyer, so I can't make a judgment on the law, but I do think it's a very serious thing that's going on in Canada. I think it actually strikes the very fabric of what we as Canadians believe it means to be Canadian. We want to feel free and have access to information. The Liberal MP mentioned the word Orwellian. I actually would take it even a step further, and I remember the days of when, under the old former Soviet regime, where you'd have Russian scientists going to conferences and being followed by KGB people.
But I mean, come on. I mean, you're comparing
That's happening.
No,
Absolutely.
But you're comparing this to the Soviet Union. I mean, listen, I mean, there may be a point here, but isn't that a bridge too far?
No, because under this, No, under the Soviet system, they were allowed to publish. They were only allowed to go to conferences, and they were followed by
But are
media
you saying that data is being changed, or that scientists are? I mean,
no, they never did that under the Soviet regime either. But when they went to conferences, as is happening in Environment Canada, people followed them to ensure when they spoke to media, there was somebody listening. That is happening now with Environment Canada scientists going to international meetings.
So what is the consequence, in your view, of all this?
It undermines the importance of science in terms of its role in a democratic society in terms of decision making. Science can never prescribe policy solutions. Science is there to provide information on which policy is formulated. There's many things that come to play in the formulation of policy, many views and opinions, but when you suppress access to one from the general public, it strikes at the very essence of what we value in a democratic society. Free access to information on which to make decisions, on which to determine whether we as a society support or don't support policy being made by our elected leaders.
All right. Andrew Weaver, climate scientist at the University of Victoria, Deputy Leader of the Green Party of British Columbia. You've been talking about this issue for a long time. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Thank you, sir.